Hello, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome today my guest, Mike Hammoud, for our live series of webinar talking about going digital in 2021. Mike is the president of the Atlantic Convenience Store Association, and today we're going to talk about the opportunities and their challenges of going digital during last year, especially when COVID hit us. And today I will let just Mike do a quick introduction about himself, and then we will dive directly into the topic. So Mike, please share with our audience a little bit who you are and what we are trying to do and achieve over here today.
Thanks, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here today. And so very quickly, a little background on myself. So the Atlantic Convenience Stores Association started in 2008. I helped create the organization and get it started here in Atlantic, Canada, to be a voice for convenience and gas retailers. So I've been involved for quite a while. We provide a lot of support for our retailers. We're a lobbying group that lobbies on their behalf, so that we can also provide education and meet with government officials on a regular basis to make sure that our industry stays viable. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy what I do.
Very, very good. I am sure that we're going to have a very interesting discussion today because we have lots of things to talk about. And as always, I first want to welcome all our viewers on Zoom or live on our Facebook page. This is where you can follow us and follow every week our webinars. I also want to thank our sponsors and partners. We want to thank Agora Office Space. This is where we are broadcasting live every week. They give us their space to do so. And we have our strategic partner, the Chartered Institute of Marketing Management of Ontario, which I am a proud member of, and I am on the management team as well as a Chief Strategy Officer. So having said this, Mike, I think now let me go and just directly dive into the topic and just ask you a question. How was 2020 for the convenience stores?
That's a pretty loaded question. I think what you'll find is 2020 was probably a very challenging year for most industries, and we weren't an exception to that. So in the middle of March of 2020, when everything kind of began to shut down and COVID had found its way into our country and into our province here in Nova Scotia and into Atlantic, Canada, there was a ton of uncertainty at that time. People were scared. We didn't know what to expect. I know that I fielded a lot of calls from retailers on, what's going to happen to our business? Are we going to be around? Everybody's at home. Nobody's going anywhere. We represent quite a few gas retailers. And as you can appreciate, they typically do a pretty robust volume of fuel. And a lot of it is very dependent on the viability of their business. And it was almost like a perfect storm, Mark. I mean, you had the price of fuel plummet from about $1, I think it was around $1.18 or $1.20, all the way down to 66 cents. And it did that very quickly. And so a lot of retailers, because a lot of people probably don't understand, but in Atlantic Canada, our fuel prices are regulated by government. So a lot of retailers got stuck with fuel in their tanks that they had paid at a much higher price that they were now forced to sell at a much lower price. So there's significant losses that were incurred by retailers at that time. But the perfect storm analogy is that, 66 cents a liter fuel would usually be really, really good for our industry, because a lot of people would have expendable cash. They'd get out there, they'd fill their cars up. It'd be really easy. But we had the price of fuel plummet, and then we had government tell everybody to stay home. so nobody could go anywhere. So that was a challenge, trying to figure that out. And we had numerous conversations with government on trying to provide some sort of support for our retailers to offset I think on average about $13,000 or $14,000 per site in losses.
Wow,
And,
this is lots of money, huh?
it was significant. It was huge. And, and sales volumes were way down. So trying to get that back up, and not only the retailers in their stores, but the fuel providers that would have tanks and tanks of fuel sitting that they're now selling at a much reduced rate as they kind of go through, because they couldn't spend through it. For some of them, it took them almost 5 or 6 months to go through the fuel.
Wow. So yeah, because they purchased at a higher price, and then we had the crisis. It stayed in their what we say, the tanks, right? The tanks under the fuel stations, and that's it, right?
Well, everything shut down for 3 months, right? So everything shut down for 3 months, and nobody was traveling. All the borders were closed, so none of that really existed. So that that was a negative side of the business. So the first thing that we wanted to do as an organization at the time was to make sure that we could deem our industry as being an essential service. So we wanted to make sure that convenience store retailers and gas retailers would deem essential. So they could remain open, because that was the most important side of things, is keeping our business open during this pandemic so that we could at least still generate some sort of revenue. It was very, very grateful and appreciated that government started providing some programs that helped with that as well too, to help with some of the wages, to help with some of the rent. And the province of Nova Scotia actually provided grants for our gas retailers as well too, to kind of help out a bit with that, which was very, very well received and muchly appreciated for that as well too. But yeah, so 2020 got off to a rocky start. Actually, by September, I would say that things were looking pretty good. I would say fuel sales were probably close to being normal. They were probably down about 15% to 20%, which was a lot better than the 50 to 70% that we were experiencing. So things are moving in the right direction. October was another great month that we're thinking, hey, here we go. Things are going well. And then November hit and we had a second wave. And then everything got shut down again. And it just went, choo. So I would say a lot of people were probably saying, man, I can't wait for 2020 to end so that we could get into 2021. It should be a much better year for sure. 2021 came and not much really changed. The only negative side of things is that the January, February months last year in 2020 were actually good months because we didn't have COVID yet. So January and February of this year were actually lower months, because we were still dealing with that whole COVID kind of thing. But overall, I would say that we did okay. I've got to commend our retailers. A lot of them pivoted, made some changes within their businesses, did some roadside pickups, did some deliveries, changed some of the products that they sell within their stores. An example, flour. Flour could have been in gold, as far as I think we were concerned back then in 2020, in April, May, and June. We had retailers that were selling pallets of flour on a weekly basis in their stores. And if you were to ask them how much flour they normally sell, they'd say probably 2 pounds a year. So to be able to make those adjustments and do that, very good.
I think this is the important thing, is that when we are in crisis, to understand when to, in a way, take a step back and look into the business and pivot the business and decide what we want to do. So now let me ask you a question, because our main focus is more about going digital. So what are your thoughts, or how did you see the convenience stores were able to adopt technology during this crisis, and how did they adjusted from a technology perspective? Did you see a major change in adoption in technology in these convenience store, which most of them are like family-owned businesses, right? At some point, right?
Yeah. So I mean, our industry is kind of split up between national corporate sites, regional corporate sites, and then independent sites, which operate here. So yeah, I mean, I think what we saw is that there were some of them that had to make some sort of adjustment to figure out how to capture that customer. So, apps like Uber Eats, were expanding their horizons a little bit to allow C-stores to be able to be a part of their platform. And I think that some of the retailers had gone that way. I know that there was a local company in Prince Edward Island that was doing delivery where you could order by app, and some convenience stores took advantage of that, joined that app. and then people could go online and order what they want. But what we saw a lot from retailers was a lot of people could call and place their orders and pay for it over the phone, and then they just go there and bring their car up to the store and they put it in their trunk and they drive away. It was very easy. During the height of the pandemic, a lot of consumers were concerned and scared, and they didn't want to go wait in big lines and be a part of that they were more comfortable with going to their local convenience store and picking up the needs that they want. And those stores that made the adjustments to bring in the products that people were looking for were able to capture that market.
Yeah, this is, I think, also a good thing that what I call the network of partners were also receptive to support the convenience stores and the small businesses, and also adjusting their own business model to embrace probably the network, which at the beginning they didn't really consider as part of their own network or as a mainstream partner for their own network, as you said, for Uber Eats and for other probably service providers. Let me ask you a question. A couple of weeks ago, we had a webinar and we discussed about loyalty programs and loyalty marketing. So my question to you is that, did you see any uptake into convenience stores who didn't have a loyalty program before adopting one just to drive more traffic into their store?
Yeah, I don't think it was a huge spike. I mean, we're still dealing with an industry that's been around for over 100 years, and sometimes getting people to make those adjustments or make those changes can be difficult to say the least. But we did see specific retailers that looked at ways to draw those customers within their business and provide those loyalty programs. And we know that there are companies out there that provide the ability to do that and to make it easy for especially an independent retailer to transition, because typically for someone to do it on their own, there's such a huge cost in trying to develop a program that it just makes better sense to use an existing company that has the ability to do that. So yeah, I would say, yeah, there was definitely some of that.
Okay. Because when we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, and also one of the things is that some stores, even outside of the convenience stores, join this kind of what we call network partners for loyalty, so that they have an added value and then try to drive more traffic to their store to compensate for all the lost traffic during the pandemic in 2020. So now let me ask you another question, because we also know that the association which you are representing, you every year have a trade show, and you had a trade show scheduled, if I am not mistaken, in October of last year, right? And tell me a little bit, how did you live this moment where it was a physical trade show, and then you had, at some point to announce to your partners that we're canceling it? And what did you do to make it happen? Because I know that you did something very interesting to make it happen. I want you to talk about it.
Yeah, so I mean, that was definitely an interesting part of 2020. So by March of 2020, the physical trade show was about, I think we're close to it being about 90% sold out for last year. Things were looking up. The show was going to be the biggest show ever. It was our third year of doing that trade show, and it was the Halifax Convention Center, and we've been there every year from the beginning. And then we started getting all these announcements about how borders were closing and this pandemic was taking over. And so in March, we were kind of like, oh my goodness gracious, are we going to be able to do this trade show this year? So 60% of our vendors come from outside of Atlantic Canada. So we're like going, oh my goodness, are we going to be able to pull this off? What's going to happen? So, and we were fielding phone calls from vendors asking like, what's going to happen with the show? And our thing was, no, we're still planning to move forward with it until we get notification from governments. We'll keep an eye on it. So we did. We started to follow it, but behind the scenes, we started to do some research to see, if we can't do this show physically, what's available? What can we do to be able to maybe do this event as a virtual event? And how does that kind of work? So we started doing some research, looking out to see what was available. Quite honestly, we were a little concerned with what was available because there really wasn't a lot. It wasn't something that was front and center, and a lot of people, I wasn't aware of anyone that was doing virtual trade shows. So it was one of those unknowns that we had to try to figure out. So as April came along and May came along, it became very evident at that point that we were probably not going to be able to do a physical show in Halifax for 2020. And we were really concerned about that, because then we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? So we really started putting some effort into doing this virtual event. So we worked with another company to try to figure out what are some of the options, what could we do? So we understand that our industry is, it's very specific. So the convenience and gas industry is a specific industry. The people that typically go to our events are, mostly not educated when it comes to technology. So we sent out surveys to the retailers in Atlantic Canada, asking them, A, have you ever attended a virtual event? B, do you use social media? Like, do you go on your computer? Do you do things? So
we went back to basics, right?
We went back to basics. We had to figure out what our customer base was and how it all kind of works. So we found out that less than 1% have ever attended a virtual event.
Wow.
And we knew that the number one choice for social media for them was Facebook. So when we looked at what was available and what was out there on platforms that were existing, most of them were kind of creating a virtual trade show that looked physical. So they were like creating fake booths with fake people, fake exhibit halls, making it look like you're at a physical event. And the first thing that we kind of thought of was, wait a second, but it's not. This is a virtual event. We have to treat it like a virtual event. It's a different event. We can't make it the same as a physical event, because it's not going to be a physical event. It's going to be a virtual event, but we still want to have the ability to communicate. We still want to have the ability. So what we decided to do was create a platform where social media met trade shows. So we knew Facebook was something they understood. We knew that Amazon was something they understood. So sliding left, sliding right made sense, and looking at things. So we wanted to create a platform, and we did this with this other company, to create a platform so that we could use it and have people come on board. We gamified it to make it fun and exciting so that they could talk to exhibitors real time, whether it's like you and I are talking to each other right now, or whether it was texting to each other, because we knew some retailers weren't comfortable with video. They were more comfortable with typing or sending messages and being able to communicate. So that's what we did. We knew that it had to cancel. We had some exhibitors that didn't see the virtual side of things, and so we ended up, not having them participate in 2020. We had other exhibitors that probably never would have participated in our event because they were based out of Vancouver, but did participate because it was a virtual event, and it was far less expensive than shipping their equipment here and buying a booth and doing all of that. So I would say overall, it actually turned out to be a very successful event. It was scary as heck. Man, it was terrifying. It was probably 2.5 to 3 times the normal work that goes into doing a physical trade show. And those that know how to do a physical trade show know there's a lot of work that goes into doing a physical trade show. So but overall, I would say we were very happy with it.
Yeah, I had the chance to participate in your virtual trade show, and I think you did a great job. Like the turnaround, like the time to turn around all this, to develop from scratch and to have something up and running. Actually, by the time you realized that you cannot do it anymore, it was somewhere around May, maybe, and then you had to have something ready by September, so that you have a proof of concept, and then you do the testing so that you are ready for your October live environment. I know that in this span of time, it's like breaking a record to do something from scratch. And
it was a lot, Mark. It was a lot of 12-hour, 13-hour days. I give all the credit to the coders that put it together to create it. We just came up with ideas. They're the ones that put it all together to make it all work. It's typically a 2 to 3 year transition to create a platform like the one that we used for our event. And you're right, it was created in 5 months.
Oh yeah, it's
And
really a record time to have from idea to execution, including what we call UAT, the user acceptance test, and all the fine tuning and debugging and whatever you have is like really something big. So I think, you know, I always say building a platform or a software or a mobile app is 50% of the challenge. The second 50% is to bring people on the platform, to make them use it, to make them understand it. Uh, so tell me a little bit. I am sure you had challenges over there. And how were you able to communicate? Because we're going again to the digital environment. What kind of social media tools or digital marketing you used? Because also I saw you did lots of very interesting digital marketing teasers and videos and whatever. So tell me a little bit about this experience and what kind of tools you use so that you can bring this awareness to your audience and also to people whom are not directly related to you as a first level audience.
Yeah, so we a lot of that credit goes to the company we were working with, but they created a lot of these teasers on Twitter and capturing markets where they were like little short 15-second videos talking about the digital platform. And I got to be honest, I was really thrilled about the platform and getting an idea of how it all kind of worked. And you know, quite honestly, me coming back, I wasn't very tech savvy, so we don't really have a lot of that. But seeing it as it was kind of developed was pretty exciting, and we did. There was a lot of teasers that were put out there. We did a lot of communicating through e-blasts, communicating through email as well too to our existing customer base. The other thing that we had to keep in mind, and this is why it was so careful on how we kind of put this together. So the trade show is kind of a closed show. So it's a show for only you know, convenience store retail owners, gas, you know, owners, manufacturers, people within our industry. So we didn't really want normal consumers coming in or attending the show. So we had to be careful on who we were capturing to kind of do this. And the other thing, when you go to a virtual event instead of a physical event, is that it opens it up to not only Atlantic Canada, but it really opened it up to the world. So we had to also be aware that you could have people from Ontario attending the event or people from Quebec attending events. So when we're doing a lot of this Twitter stuff or a lot of this LinkedIn stuff, so I think we did stuff on LinkedIn, stuff on Twitter, stuff on Facebook, just kind of targeting our audience to try to create ways to create as much awareness. I know there was a phone campaign as well too, where retailers were called to talk about the event, and then the e-blasts and the emails. I mean, it was continuous awareness going through it. We used a lot of our partners that were there at the event to get them to communicate with the retailers. One of our big partners, Atlantic Lottery Corporation, they were fantastic. They actually put the event on every ALC terminal in the province, which only retailers could see and read from their perspective. When they signed on in the morning, it was there to tell them about the event. So it was cool because it was so new. Nobody really knew how we were going to do things. We just knew that we had to communicate it. So you're right. Building the platform was part of it. But the biggest challenge that most people have with a virtual event is getting people to come to the virtual event. Yeah. And I feel like we did a really, really good job at getting unique visitors to attend the event. And we had quite a few hundred retailers attend the event. So from a virtual perspective, that's a home run, especially in the first year of something that's an unknown.
Of course, you know, especially it's not like the first year, it's the first time even you are experiencing it. It's the first time the software was tested. It's the first time on many fronts, right? Like, I think it took lots of courage to do that because anything could have gone wrong, right? It's like
Mark, it was terrifying. Let's be honest. It was a terrifying experience, but a great feeling experience to know that we were able to accomplish something. And, you know, we did the trade show, and we did that in October. And then we have another big event that we do every year, which is our Retail Convenience Awards. Yeah. This is our red carpet event. This is our biggest fundraising event for the association. And we had to do that virtually. So knowing that we already took one step towards doing something virtually, we decided to create this. And then we worked with a company locally here called FMAV, which had a sound stage, and we were able to go in there and actually shoot all of my presentations or all of my things on a stage and kind of make it look professional with the screen behind you, and not use a blue screen or a green screen, but to do it for real, like we're at the event. So again, it was one of those things where we've never really done a virtual event like this. So we had done the trade show one, whole different kind of platform, very different than trying to do a gala, because you want the gala to look good. You don't want it to be boring. And you know, the gala was a 1 hour event virtually, which is typically like a 4-hour event live. So to kind of put that all together into a 1 hour event, because we knew based on the research that we did on events like that, people aren't going to sit in front of their computer for hours, and even an hour is kind of long. But because of all the information that we had to get in there, we were able to do that. But we had transitions that happened in between segments with music and different things that were hopefully going to keep everybody kind of contained and watching and be a part of what's going on. So yeah, again, I mean, we did that. We put it together, made the investment to do that. We got sponsorship to do that, to put it together. And we did that virtually. We tried to figure out, because it's usually a big dinner gala, sit down, everybody's there. We even had discussions about how we could incorporate food into it somehow. Could we get DoorDash to deliver food to all the participants at exactly the same time, so that they could watch the event while, you know, eating dinner, kind of like they're at the event? And man, but it was, again, it was like 2.5 times to 3 times the work.
I can imagine. So technically you had to organize 2 events online instead of like having it all real in person in a physical location. Actually, what you're talking about, at the somewhere around like June, July of last year, I was following up a couple of groups on social media, and one company, I forgot its name, it was in the United States. They were running their monthly board meetings, and then what they decided is that to deliver food to the board members, because usually they had, like, the board meeting, they had a break in the middle to have lunch. So they delivered lunch, and then so that they have this experience, even each one working from home. So I totally understand that at least you thought about it. I know how difficult it is to organize it and to synchronize all this. And you know, this is the beauty of it, is that COVID and the pandemic and the economic crisis and all this roller coaster of unknown things that happened to us pushed us to think completely differently, right? Like, these things would have never thought about them 2 years ago. Like, this wasn't a problem for us, right? And now I have a question from one of our audience who are with us on Zoom. It's an anonymous participant. They are asking, when you were developing this platform, for sure you had to do many compromises on features and deciding what to go for and what not to have. So if there is one feature which you didn't do, you would love to add it, what it would be?
If there was a feature that I would love to add that wasn't there for the trade show, or for the gala?
Yes, for the trade show.
For the trade show. It would be a feature that I don't think you'd be able to add. It'd be to be able to physically touch
the product.
The product. We created 3D modeling for some of the product. We had like a cool new products room where they could come in and see the cool new products. We had a promotions room. Like there was everything that would be similar to what would be there. I guess the only thing is that you couldn't really see. Like it was a page. It was like a social media page for each one of the exhibitors. They would kind of talk. So the biggest element that misses on a virtual event compared to a physical event is the ability to be there in person and to touch and feel and to create that excitement of being there and getting stuff for free. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. So we tried to capture it all though, Mark. I mean, I think for the first stab at it for the first year, I think we were able to capture just about all of it to be able to get it in there.
Yeah, I can imagine, it's very difficult to say that, even if you want to make it perfect, it's impossible, right? There is always something that you would say, I wish I would have done it, or I wish I wouldn't, right? Like
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't even do a physical show perfect.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
that's true.
to be able to move that over to a virtual event, like to give you an example of something else, like we do a couple of golf tournaments a year, right? And we were wondering for last year, is there a way that we could do that virtually? Because there was a possibility we weren't going to be able to do them. We were fortunate enough that we were able to do both golf tournaments in September last year in person, which was great. We just couldn't have anybody outside of Atlantic, Canada at the event because of the bubble. But I remember having this conversation with some of the IT guys and say, hey, listen, why don't we do a virtual golf tournament? And people could create their teams. We could have like the golf things with our sponsors' logos on them and all of that. And they're like, yeah, you can't do that. I go, what do you mean you can't do that? And they're like, well, I can go online right now and join a golf tournament. Yeah, but they've created that for everyone. For you to create your own branded virtual golf for the ACSA would be about $2.5 million in 2 years to create. You'd have to go to EA Sports or someone like that to get them to create what you're looking for. And I was like, oh, that's probably not going to happen then. So, yeah, but hey, could be a really cool concept for somebody kind of moving forward if they could create a platform that people could do virtual golf events and they could like swing the club like you normally do in your thing, keep score and have a leaderboard and do all of that. I think you'd get some people that participate in that and sponsor and be a part of it and get others to watch. People watching while you're doing it. Pretty cool.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Sometimes we come up with ideas and then we realize afterwards that they are expensive to implement, or they take like a long time to implement. And then we say, you know what, let's put it aside. We have another question from an anonymous attendee as well, asking a question, and this is up to you, Mike, if you want to disclose any numbers or whatever, but the question is, how many unique users attended and stay tuned the entire event, and compared to the total number of attendees to the physical event in 2019? It's up to you how you want to answer this question, but it's coming on our live feed.
So for the virtual event, I don't know, I can't remember the exact number, but we had well over 300 unique users. So that would be people, 300 different retailers that attended the event. I know that we had, it was well over 1,000, or I think it was 1,500 visits that were kind of done throughout that. It was I want to say it was a 3-day event. I think it was a 3-day event that we did. So it was over 3 days. As I mentioned earlier, we gamified the event. So every time you'd come back on the next day, you still get a chance to win prizes. So, and that really helped bring retailers back and visit and different things. I would say at one time, as an average throughout the entire event, that there was probably about 100 maybe on at one time, all the time, kind of fluctuating through that. So it was really good from that perspective. We found that some retailers really stayed quite a bit. Some of them came back multiple times in a day. We were very happy with how many people took advantage of the show promotions. There's quite a few of those, the show deals and different things like that. So from a virtual event to a physical event, because I think that was the question. So in 2019, physically, we would have had about 1,000 people, 1,000 retailers that would have been at that event. So, So, I mean, but again, from my perspective, doing a virtual event that has never, ever, ever, ever happened before, and getting people to do something that they are very uncomfortable with, and to get over 300 of them to do that at an event. I know, talking to other people that did virtual events, they were lucky to have maybe 100 or maybe 50 attend. So for us to do that in the first year, we feel confident that going into 2021, here we are, where, our goal is to do the event physically again on October 26th and 27th at the Halifax Convention Center in downtown Halifax. That's our plan. We're going to make our final decision probably by the end of August. But if it doesn't happen and we have to go virtual again, well, the good news is we already have the platform.
Yeah.
The other good news is we've had the ability to work out some of the kinks during doing it the first year, and now we have something to compare it to, and we know what we can do a little differently and things like that to make it even more successful. But the plan is to do it physically. We're confident that if that doesn't work, we've got the digital ability to do it virtually. So that's the positive thing.
At least this year, you will not have to develop from scratch. At least you just have maybe to enhance here or there, right? And do a few things just to make it a little bit better. But all the hard work is already behind you. And, and just to echo what you're saying, I participated in probably 15 different either trade shows or international virtual events that were supposed to be physical, like exhibitions and this kind of stuff, or conferences. And I can tell you that even at an international level, the attendance rate is again, because now I compare your attendance rate versus 2019, it was around 10% or 15% of what you would have done physically. And through the other events which I attended, also I think they were around this ratio. They were around the 10%, 15%. It depends sometimes when, for example, I attended events that are more into advanced countries where they are using more technology, like Singapore, like Hong Kong. Probably the attendance rate is a little bit higher because there was no need for this learning curve for the user to get into the platforms. But like I attended events that were done in Europe, like in Barcelona, like in UK, in the Middle East as well. And most of them didn't have the same attendance rate which they had in the physical event. So I think personally that you've done really tremendously well, and the achievement, because we also understand that we are a small province. It's a small team who worked on this. It's not like like 20 people in developing the software, right? It's not like a company that has 200 resources to put behind and to do it. So we understand with the limited resources we have, but the great talents which we have locally as well, we are able to achieve much. And this is a great lesson, how an association like yours with partners which you had in our own local market, that we are able to compete to a certain level with much bigger markets. And so my question here, are you looking to expand this maybe beyond our geographical area? Are you trying to look at how can we make this bigger? Like if we have the platform, we have now the experience. What is the future of what you have done? This is my question to you.
That's a good question. I mean, we've gotten quite a few different people that have approached us about the platform and said, can it be used for other things? Can it be used for any specific type of trade show or convention? And the answer is yes, it can. We designed it specifically for the convenience and gas retail industry, but it could be used for anything. And the hardest part, as you mentioned earlier, is actually creating these platforms and putting them together and having them physically work. And there are a lot of really cool things that are tied to this platform that worked out really good, where it notifies people and lots of reminders and different things like that. But yeah, I mean, we've discussed it. We've looked at it. Do you you lease out the platform? Do you give it to other organizations and tailor it towards what they need, and they can, you know, rent the platform from you, or do whatever to do what they need to do for maybe a trade show that they want to do virtually, or a convention that they want to do virtually? Absolutely. I mean, I'm not the guy that would do it. It would be the IT guys that would do it. But when you were talking about small teams, like we're a team of 3 that put all of that together and made it work. So it's pretty amazing how far we came with both platforms, because even the Gala platform was different than the platform that we used for the trade show. So it was similar but different, and we were able to take that and create the other platform and do that with it, and incorporate FMAV with the live video, and then incorporate, we had, you know, a comedian from PEI that was there as well too. So we had to incorporate him into the platform and do all of that. But it was cool because you took all the video, you put it together, created your segments in between them, create a beginning, create an end. It was almost like creating a motion picture, because even though it went live on YouTube, the event, the gala, it was actually a pre-recorded event that looked like it went live, right? I mean, because you talked to a lot of people, and that was part of our research, because we were looking at doing the event live, and they were like, oh my goodness, don't do it live. Do you know what could go wrong with doing a live event? He goes, you pre-record it, but you send it as a live event. So to everybody watching it, it's still live. The live will be on the corner. It'll be there. It'll look like it's running live, but there won't be any glitches. And, you know, I watched a couple of live events that were put on to get, you know, some of the help that we needed to create ours. And I saw exactly what they were talking about, because, you know, internet's a very powerful tool, but sometimes it doesn't work as well in some other areas. And you had a person that was introducing someone, and they would introduce them, and then it would be like 5 seconds, 6, 7, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds before you saw them and they start to talk, right? So it's like dead space is your worst enemy. You don't want any silence or dead space. You want to be able to make it flow very good all the way through, and trying to get transitions in between that and doing it live, and having somebody sitting in front of their laptop trying to integrate between this person on Zoom's got to go next, or this person has to go next. And it just, it was terrifying to say the least. So yeah.
I totally agree with you, because like right now we are live, we're not pre-recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you see me looking at different location of the screen, because I am managing already 3 different screens, and I need to edit, and you see how we change. So we totally understand. And then if you are a small team, the risk of things going wrong is very high. And then usually when you think that something will go wrong, it will go wrong, right? So especially with this kind of high visibility events and important events. So
you have one shot, Mark. You got one shot at it. That's totally how it kind of works.
Yeah, you know, thanks God, you know, Mike, you are now my we did 7th guest so far, and thanks God we didn't have a glitch. We didn't have anything that cut the feed or disrupted the flow of the discussion. But again, this is a risk, and which I want to take, because I always believe that there is the authenticity behind it, right? And usually, you know, what is good as well, because we're talking about technology and digital environment. The consumer of today, after you know, COVID, we became even more tolerant, because we understand the restrictions, so that if the glitches and the problems which you are having today on technology, I think the consumer is accepting them more than if they had happened 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And this is great for us, for organizations like you, and like even companies like us who are doing live events, because we feel a little bit more secured, but we still want to have things to be perfect. I totally understand what you're talking about. Mike, you know, if you believe it or not, we already passed the 45 minutes mark of our discussion. And I am sure that we can still talk for hours and hours about not only your experience and what happened, but about the convenience store industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if we want to start easing into the closing remarks, what are your major recommendations for the convenience stores which are part of your associations? What can you tell them so that they can remain active and not lose the market share and not lose their customers? What are the 2 cents which you as a president of the association could give to your audience?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely in different times, kind of moving forward. As you mentioned earlier, 2020 was kind of an eye opener. Really changed the way that the way that we looked at the world. It was the first time in our lifetime that we ever saw something disrupt the entire world and not just our region. So it became very evident that we had to think outside the box and figure out a way to help promote our industry, help promote what we have to offer for our customers. And so I would say that, technology plays a major role in that kind of moving forward. So anything that we can kind of do to create some sort of an online platform for products that are being sold within our business, I think will lead to success down the road. And at the same time, to continue to work with online platforms to create programs where they're driving people to our stores as well too. So I think, it's important that if we're doing a promotion with somebody that it's going to, we still want them to physically come into the stores. I mean, it's really important that they come into the stores. We are an industry that we're in every single community across this country. On a national perspective, I think convenience stores serve about 10.4 million people a day. So it's a huge industry. A lot of people may not understand that or see that, but it is. And we're one of those industries and retailers where people are typically visiting our stores 3 to 5 times a week, whereas, they would go to a grocery store 1 day a week. So we have that ability. It's there. We have a captive audience. We're in the center of most communities. We usually give back to most communities. So I think it's important that they look at it from that perspective. How do we stay the course of what we have, but how do we evolve? And what do we look at when it comes to technology to help grow our business in this 21st century? And how do we keep moving that dial towards success? And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it.
Very good. I think I totally agree with you. And the only thing I would add is if any convenience store or any retail business, and I would say street level retail business, they need to look at technology, because technology today is going to be their best ally, right? I know the challenges of probably many of us don't master technology, are afraid of it for many reasons. The main things are we are afraid because we don't know how much it's going to cost. So we have this fear of technology means expensive things. Whereas I can assure everybody who is listening to us and watching us that we have lots of cheap technology. When I talk cheap, like affordable, that are high-end quality services, which we can all look at. And don't be afraid because you don't know how to handle the technology, because the new technology is so easy from a user experience. User interfaces are becoming even more and more, easy to use, easy to understand, more intuitive. So I always say, don't be afraid of technology. So with this, Mike, I want in a way to thank you and thank our viewers, our participants on Zoom and on our live feed on Facebook. I really appreciated this discussion and I want to thank you for your time. I want to also remind our viewers that we are going live every week on a Wednesday at 12 p.m. Atlantic time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. You can find all the lineup for March already on our website. You can register. Registration is for free. It's for everybody. We just want to share information and make sure that we are putting all the information needed in the hands of our viewers. So Mike, thank you so much. And now I will just let you go back to your routine business for the day. And I want to thank our viewers, and we hope to see you again next week on our webinars. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah.